Guys, can you believe that we barely have a week left to close 2025? I mean, where did all the time go? As I reflect on 2025 and think about the coming year, I realize how we're always excited for new beginnings, but rarely notice the baggage we often drag along. The stones in our pockets, the dust in the corners, the weight we don't even notice. But before we can truly step into what's new, some things need to be acknowledged, released, swept out even, or gently closed. I never imagined I would have to intentionally seek closure on so many things before entering the new year. People, situations, habits, different kinds of relationships. Well, I did know that I wanted to enter 2026 lighter with a fresh, clean slate and all of that. But I didn't quite expect myself to actively think about closure or take steps toward it at all. And I think part of the reason this caught me off guard is because I had misunderstood what closure really was and what it stood for. For a long time, I thought closure only belonged to dramatic endings, broken relationships, clear goodbyes, or moments where something visibly fell apart. I didn't realize that sometimes closure is needed for quieter things like unexpressed disappointments, unmet expectations, relationships that didn't end but shifted, prayers answered differently, and even versions of ourselves that no longer fit who God is shaping us into. I actually found myself checking the dictionary definition of closure just to be sure I was using the right word for what I was seeking. Because what I'm talking about, right, is not about cutting people off, though that may be necessary sometimes, right? It's about healthy boundaries. This is what I'm talking about. Healthy boundaries, peace of mind, clarity, and just things that have to put in their right places as we prepare to step into a fresh new chapter. Lately, I've come to understand that sometimes you just need to make peace with things as they are. All you need is clarity on where certain things stand in your life without trying to force anything to work or exist. As the year comes to an end, I have been paying attention to the things I do not want to carry into the next year. And in very practical ways, I've been decluttering, giving away things I no longer need, clearing out what I know I will not be using anymore, letting go of what has simply taken up space for too long. And somewhere in that process, I realized I was doing the same thing inwardly. I've been reflecting a lot about so many things. I've been thinking about relationships in general, friendships, questions about where I stand with people and where they stand with me. And I'm like, closure is important. In many ways, I've come to see closure as an act of stewardship, emotional, spiritual, relational. The Bible often talks about seasons, right? Beginnings, endings, growth, moving forward, and all of that. And I'm learning that sometimes closure isn't about removing something suddenly or drastically. It's about God inviting us to release what we've been carrying longer than we're meant to. You know, it has nothing to do with bitterness or resentment. It is simply obedience to growth. And that, I believe, is essential for healthy living. Some doors don't slam shut, they simply stop opening. And there's wisdom in recognizing when God is calling you to admit closure and stop knocking. This year has been full of reflection for me. And so, even on my birthday last week, I intentionally just chose gratitude for the entire day. But I noticed that toward the end of the day, my thoughts returned to a few unresolved places, not with heaviness, but just for clarity. And so I wrote them down and realized immediately that what I needed wasn't answers or explanations, but closure in quite a number of places in my life. The word closure is often misunderstood. And so we tend to think that it means confrontation or dramatic endings or, say, a final conversation where everything is explained and resolved. But that hasn't been my experience. And I've learned that sometimes closure is quiet, very quiet. Sometimes it happens internally. Oftentimes it actually comes simply through understanding, admitting something, accepting something, and simply letting something or someone go. Just dropping some issues and letting them go. Okay, guys, so quick story time. Earlier this year, I ran into someone that I once almost dated years ago. Someone I hadn't thought about in a long time. The relationship I shared with this person was never clearly defined. We did not label anything, we just existed in each other's lives. We had so much in common. We laughed easily, spent time together on campus, and we naturally simply grew close. We never got to name anything because just when we felt we could define what we shared, I had to travel out of the country for the first time. We were both devastated, but we could do nothing about it. And then when I came back shortly after that, he traveled. She also traveled, and that's just how things stayed. It always felt like we were in different places and time zones all the time. And over the years, we'd chat here and there on social media, but we never really talked about what we shared from the very beginning. Fast forward after my divorce, somewhere last year, for reasons I could not quite explain, he began to occupy my thoughts again. And then coincidentally, we bumped into each other somewhere in town and exchanged a few words. Nothing much, just pleasantries. Where have you been? I missed you. How have you been? How's life? Stuff like that. But afterwards, those thoughts about him intensified. I found myself wondering if it meant anything. Was it loneliness, or what was this thing suddenly nudging me towards such an old flame? A classic case of life in the mix. Anyway, eventually I reached out to him. We spoke, and in that space, I realized something important. I realized that those thoughts that had been occupying my mind were never about rekindling anything. It wasn't about go and get your life momo back. No, they were about closing a chapter that had been left open for far too long. And this was something I realized as soon as we started talking. And guess what? Once I realized that the longing disappeared, the confusion lifted, the questions stopped popping into my head. And I learned one big lesson, that not everything that resurfaces is meant to be restored. Not everything that resurfaces is meant to be restored. Some things only return to be concluded. I realized this again recently in a long-standing relationship, a very good friendship, with someone I've worked deeply with, someone I've shared life with in ways others may never know. Over time, I felt a quiet distance growing between us, not because of conflict or anything bad, but because our lives had moved in very different directions. Recently, we found ourselves in the same space at an event, and while everything was pleasant, I realized something gently but firmly. We no longer belonged in each other's worlds. We no longer belong in each other's worlds. And I say this not out of resentment or comparison, but because my values, priorities, and focus have shifted. It was clear after we did some catching up, and I realized we simply want different things in life now. And that's okay. That very moment gave me closure. I just needed to feel at peace, confirming what I had always felt about the state of our friendship. I've come to terms with another kind of closure, the kind that comes with discernment, the kind where patterns become clear and you realize that the best action is to walk away gently or create safe distances for yourself, just for your peace of mind. The kind that makes you think hard about boundaries or actually even question whether you have any boundaries in place at all. Friendships don't need to end in chaos. I don't think any relationship ever has to. Sometimes things simply require repositioning or restructuring, and that's okay. Here is simply what I've been saying. Closure doesn't always mean something went wrong. Oftentimes, it means a season has been completed. Something served its purpose or taught the lesson it was intended to teach, and it ended. Because realistically, not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some people are meant to be in our lives only for the lessons we must learn from them and for the lessons they must learn from us. Sometimes closure means stepping aside, and sometimes it means closing the door without anger or malice or disappointment, you know, just only for the sake of peace to reign. As the year closes, I am choosing not to carry confusion or misalignments into the next one. And that's just one of my main reasons for seeking closure. I choose not to carry any emotional weight that can easily be resolved through clarity. This season of my life requires focus and simplicity. It requires relationships that nourish my spirit and align with who I am becoming. And so choosing closure for me is not loss. It is, in fact, gain. It's a stewardship, knowing what weight I no longer need to carry. And so if you find yourself reflecting as the year ends, wondering why certain things still occupy your thoughts, perhaps what you need is not another attempt to force things to work, but actually a gentle conclusion. Closure is not the absence of love. No, 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 no. It is often the presence of wisdom and honesty with yourself. And that, I believe, is crucial, even without answers or explanations from the other person involved. You don't always need dialogue or confrontation. You can choose closure peacefully and quietly. As the year comes to a close, I know there's so much going on with most of us, but please hear this clearly. You are allowed to end this year without guilt. You don't have to bear the weight of explaining why certain things did not work out. You don't have to justify why some relationships changed. You don't have to carry regret as proof that you tried hard enough. Closure is not an accusation against yourself, it is an act of honesty. And ending the year in peace doesn't mean you lack ambition or faith. It simply means that you have learned discernment. Some things were meant to accompany you for a season, not a lifetime. And it's okay to thank them, release them, and step forward lighter. You don't owe the past an explanation. You only owe the future your focus and clarity. This year has taught me that seeking closure doesn't make me unloving, ungrateful, or impatient. It makes me honest about what no longer serves the season I am entering, honest about what I can carry forward and what I need to lay down right now. And it's okay if you find yourself needing closure in unexpected places, in places where you never thought required it. That is a reminder that you're growing. And so do not shun that feeling or that nudging. Sometimes the most important thing you can do before a new beginning is to gently and intentionally close what has already run its course. And so if this reflection resonates with you, you're welcome here. This is a space for thoughtful conversations about life as it truly unfolds, including the endings, the quiet shifts, the rebuilding, and the becoming. Okay, guys, so question for you. What does closure mean to you now? Or what are you choosing not to carry forward into the next year? Please share your thoughts in the comments and kindly subscribe if you enjoy conversations like this. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay blessed. Bye bye.